Your most successful year might be the one that destroys you. I know that sounds dramatic, but hear me out. 3 months ago, one of my clients sent me a message at 2 a.m. She'd just finished her launch debrief, and even though she'd hit her revenue goals, she wrote, "Salome, I can't do this again. I'd rather go back to my corporate job than launch like this one more time." Here's what's wild. Her launch was technically a success, $47,000 in revenue. But she'd worked until midnight every single night for 3 weeks straight, snapped at her kids constantly, and forgot to eat actual meals because she was surviving on coffee and adrenaline. 6 weeks later, she launched again. Same revenue. But this time, she finished work every day by 4 p.m., took weekends completely off, and actually enjoyed the process. I'm Salome Shellac, and today I'm breaking down the exact framework we use to completely redesign how she works. Because here's the truth nobody's talking about. Burnout isn't a badge of honor. It's a business strategy problem. And in today's episode, you'll discover the 3 shifts that separate sustainable business builders from people who flame out in year 2 or 3. So you can build your freedom empire without sacrificing your health, your relationships, or your sanity. So stay tuned. If you think working harder is going to get you to your goals faster, I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Here's what I'm seeing right now in the online business world, and honestly, it is breaking my heart. We're in this really weird moment where everyone's celebrating their wins on social media, and that's not new. That always happens. But you see the screenshots and the sold out programs and the 6-figure launches. And that's beautiful, right? And we should celebrate wins. But there's something else that happens behind the scenes in our hearts that we need to talk about. I'm talking to more and more online course creators, coaches, consultants than ever who are hitting their financial goals. They're actually doing better than they anticipated. For the first time in a long time, they're doing better than usual. And simultaneously, they feel like they're falling apart. They're making more money than they ever thought possible, and they're more exhausted, more anxious, and more disconnected from why they started this business in the first place. And you know what? This is not just with my clients that I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this in some of the biggest names in the industry. So recently I was doing a little bit of podcasting research, and I was on a site that kind of suggests podcasts you might like based on whatever podcast you're looking at. And I did what any curious marketer does. I clicked on all the ones I knew that were run by some big names in the industry. The first one I clicked on was Carrie Green, the Female Entrepreneur Association lady. Now, I have a bit of a soft spot for Carrie because she was one of the very first women I started following long before she was successful in any way. And I see a podcast episode she put up on the 8th of July, and it's titled, "I Was Running a 7-Figure Business and Falling Apart Behind the Scenes." And then I see one on July 22nd called, "I Lost Myself. Here's How I'm Finding My Way Back." And then I notice that her last episode was posted on the 26th of August, and there has not been an episode since. Now, I could totally be reading something into this, but I just felt like I was seeing someone who's going through something very specific that's 100% related to her business and to business burnout. But I kept scrolling. The next podcast I saw was Jenna Kutcher, and she posted on the 8th of July, 6 hidden warning signs of burnout and how to reverse them. And then on the 6th of October, she has an interview with Jen Hatmaker titled "The Permission to Burn It Down and Start Over on Your Terms." Now, I'm not a listener of Jenna's show regularly, and I know very little about Jen Hatmaker, but this all sounds like a bit of business burnout to me. So I keep going. And then I find the Boss Babe podcast with Natalie Ellis. She has no less than 5 episodes posted in September, all dedicated to high functioning burnout. And guess what? Her last episode, posted on the 9th of October, is titled, I'm Taking a Break. And there hasn't been an episode since. And this is exactly what I did when I was too burnt out to keep churning out more podcast content. So I wonder if you see the pattern here. These are 7-figure business owners, successful women who have made it, in inverted commas, by every external measure. And they're all hitting the wall at the same time. And this isn't a coincidence. This is a systemic problem with how we've been taught to build online businesses. And if you're planning your 2026 strategy right now, which you probably are if you're listening to this in November or December, this matters more than ever. Because here's what happens. You look at your 2025 results, you see what worked, and your brain immediately goes, okay, let's do more of that in 2026. More launches, more content, more social media, more everything. But nobody stops to ask the question that actually matters. Can I sustain this? Not just financially. Can I sustain this emotionally, physically, mentally? Can I do this without destroying my health, my relationships, and my joy? Because let me tell you what I learned after working with hundreds of course creators over the past 10 years. The ones who are still in business 5 years later aren't the ones who hustled the hardest. They're the ones who figured out how to build sustainability into their business model from the start. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. And this is part of our Building Your Freedom Empire series. And throughout November, we'll be talking about how to build and scale your business sustainably without burning out or losing your mind. So make sure you tune in every Tuesday and Thursday in November and set yourself up for a fabulous 2026. Let's begin by talking about an energy audit. I'm going to teach you how to track what's actually draining you. But before we do that, let me tell you about a massive mistake I made in year 3 of my business. I was tracking everything financially, right? Revenue, expenses, profit margins, cost per lead, return on ad spend, ROAS, all the things. I had spreadsheets for days. You know I'm a spreadsheet girl. But I wasn't tracking the one metric that actually determines whether your business is sustainable. Energy. I'll never forget this moment. I was sitting in my office looking at my calendar for the upcoming month, and I literally felt nauseous. Not because I had too much to do, but because I realized that I had structured my entire business around things that drained me. We believe it should be hard, right? And so we lean into things that are hard. I was doing weekly Facebook Lives that made me anxious for 2 days before. Client calls scheduled back to back to back for hours with no buffer time. Content creation every single day because I thought consistency meant daily posting. Here's what's fascinating. When I finally did what I'm about to have you do, I discovered that about 60% of my weekly activities were energy drains. 60%. And here's the kicker. Most of them weren't even moving the revenue needle. But I need to tell you this, and this is hard for me to talk about, but it's important. Some of you might know that I experienced burnout around the end of 2021. And listen, I knew I was working a lot at the time, like a lot. I had 18 clients and about 5 student groups that I had running and a team of 11. But I kept telling myself I could handle it. I kept pushing through because I thought it'll get easier if I just push through. And slowly I started noticing that I was finding it harder and harder to unwind. I remember my family going away for my birthday to this beautiful beachside resort called Noosa here in Queensland. So picture this. I am lying by a pool, gorgeous Queensland weather. My kids are there, my husband's there. I'm completely unable to switch my brain off of work. Just constantly thinking about work. Unable to be present, unable to enjoy what should have been the perfect moment. By October, I was crying all the time. And I still didn't stop. And then in November, one Sunday morning, I was lying on the couch watching TV, trying to relax, when I suddenly felt like I was completely unable to breathe. Like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. I lost all the feelings in my hand and my feet, and I saw black dots in front of me. My heart was beating uncontrollably. And that's when my husband insisted that I call the doctor, who promptly diagnosed it as a panic attack and put me on anti-anxiety meds, booked me in to talk to a psychologist, and ordered me to take a holiday. It was not fun. And even after that, I still struggled. In December that year, we went on another family vacation to Green Island in the Great Barrier Reef. So beautiful, paradise. And I still couldn't relax. I was still so anxious. I'll be honest to tell you that I only started feeling like I had healed from that sometime in the middle of 2024. That's almost 3 years later. 3 years to recover from burnout. And here's what I changed. I significantly cut back on the number of clients we were working with in the agency. I closed down most of my student groups. I stopped doing things that drained me simply because they made money. I started recovering when I dropped the madness for a long time and built it all back up in a more sustainable way. Now, I'm telling you this story not to scare you, but because I wish someone had told me earlier that my body is going to give me signals. Mine did. That inability to unwind at the pool in Noosa, that was a signal. The constant crying in October, that was a signal. And I ignored every single one of them until my body literally forced me to stop. So here's your first action step. And I'm going to be really direct about this because I don't want you to end up where I ended up. For the next week, I want you to track your energy levels after every business activity. Not just, was this productive, but did this energize me or did it drain me? You can use a simple scale like +2 for energizing, +1 for neutral, -1 for slightly draining, and -2 for seriously draining. Track everything. You can just keep a piece of paper next to your desk and write it down. That podcast episode you recorded, that client call you had, that social media post you created, the email you had to draft, the admin task you completed, the SOP you formulated. Because here's what I learned the hard way. You cannot build a sustainable business if you don't know what's unsustainable about it. And you can't know what's unsustainable if you're not paying attention to the signals your body and your brain are sending you. Now, here's what you're going to discover when you do this exercise. And I've seen this with every single client or student who does it. You'll find that you're spending an enormous amount of time on -1 and -2 activities that could either be eliminated, delegated, batched, or completely redesigned. One of my students, Sarah, discovered that she was spending 6 hours a week creating Instagram reels that got decent engagement, but never really converted to sales, or she didn't really know if they did. 6 hours. And they were 2 activities for her. She felt anxious making them, stressed about posting them, and then disappointed when they didn't convert. We eliminated them completely and replaced them with 1 weekly email to her list and a couple of reformatted podcast videos, which she actually enjoyed writing the copy for and which was easy to outsource. And they got her just as many views on Reels as the others that she spent hours creating. Her energy drain went down and she was able to focus on the more important tasks in her business. And the principle I want you to understand here is that you cannot build a sustainable business if you don't know what's unsustainable about it. And your body already knows that. Your body will tell you if you're willing to listen. So your action step from this is do the energy audit. 7 days, every business activity, track it. And please, if you're seeing warning signs like I had, don't ignore them. Your business is not worth your health. Trust me on this. You will lose more money when you burn out than you will lose when you slow down. So that's the first thing. Do the energy exercise. The second point I want to make is what I call the 60% rule. So you stop running at capacity. And this is for all my ADHD girls out there like me. I'm going to challenge you on something that might feel uncomfortable. You know how everybody talks about maximizing productivity? All the bros. And optimizing your time and getting the most out of every hour, right? Seize the day. That's actually what's burning you out. Let me explain this with a story from my agency. A few years ago, we had this month where everything lined up perfectly. Every single ad account was performing beautifully. Meta was doing what it should be doing. All our clients were happy. Revenue was the highest it had been in a long time. The team was happy. Morale was great. And I remember thinking, damn girl, you made it. This is exactly how I want the business to run. And then one of my key team members got sick. Not seriously, just a regular cold that knocked her out for a couple of weeks. And very nearly, the operation nearly collapsed. Why? Because we were running at 100% capacity. There was no buffer, no margin, no room for life. And that's when I learned about the 60% rule from a business coach that I followed. And it completely changed how I operate. Here's the concept. If you're consistently operating at 90 to 100% of your capacity, your time capacity, your energy capacity, your team's capacity, you're only one crisis away from burnout. Instead, you want to be operating at about 60 or 70% of your capacity most of the time. That leaves 30 to 40% buffer for creativity or strategic thinking or shit hitting the fan, life events, new opportunities, or rest and recovery. Now, I can hear some of you freaking out right now, like, Salome, I'm barely keeping it up as it is. How am I supposed to operate at 60%? Here's how. You're going to stop doing all the things. Not everything, just things that aren't actually building your freedom empire. And this is where the energy audit you just did becomes gold. Let me give you a real example from one of my intensive clients. She came to me completely overwhelmed. She was creating content 5 days a week across 3 platforms, doing 2 webinars a month, running a Facebook group, sending daily emails, and launching quarterly. I'm tired just thinking about that. When we did her energy audit, we discovered something shocking. 80% of her revenue came from her email list, not from her Facebook group, not from her daily Instagram stories, her email list. This shouldn't be a surprise that your email list is the source of revenue. So we cut everything else by 50%. 1 webinar a month instead of 2. Content 3 days a week instead of 5. She archived her Facebook group and it was like a celebration, and just started focusing on writing really, really good emails to her list. Revenue stayed exactly the same, but her energy, completely different. She went from operating at 120% capacity, which is why she was burning out, to about 65% capacity. Now that's a pretty sweet difference. She used it to finally take Fridays off, to book once a month meetings with herself where all she did was think strategically about her business, to actually enjoy her life. Running at capacity is not impressive. It's unsustainable. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your calendar for the next month and find 3 things you can eliminate or reduce by 50%. Not things that directly generate revenue. If you're using sales calls and that's how you make sales, that's not what you should be cutting here. But those reels, those stories, think about those. The supporting activities that are eating your time and energy, think about those. The next thing I want to talk to you about is designing your business around your energy patterns, not against them. This is going to sound so simple, but I promise you, we all get this wrong at times. You cannot force yourself to be productive at times when your body and your brain naturally aren't. And when you try, that's when burnout happens. And I learned this the hard way. Those first few years after the business started taking off, I was trying to work like I did in my corporate job. Plus, I was also getting up in the middle of the night so that I could meet with clients in their time zone. You know, sometimes I'd be up at 2 a.m. And at 6 a.m., I'm back behind my computer working straight through until 6 p.m. and just power through the afternoon slump with coffee and more coffee and more coffee. And then by 7 p.m., I want a drink. And then I have a drink so I can relax, and then I don't sleep well. It's a vicious cycle. It was killing me. And I had to figure this out. My brain is most creative between 9 a.m. and noon. After lunch, for about an hour, I'm useless. I get that afternoon slump. And then it picks back up around 3, and I can go through until about 7, and then I'm cooked. But I'm great at admin tasks and responding to emails and talking to my team in the afternoon. I can do all that. But once I redesigned my schedule to work with my energy patterns instead of against them, it's made a huge difference to my satisfaction and my joy in my business and my productivity. And now my mornings are sacred. On Mondays, I have no meetings at all. That's when I record podcast most days. I write important emails and do strategic work in the mornings. And then in the afternoon, that's when I do calls, talk to the bookkeeper, handle admin, record SOPs, all the stuff that doesn't require my highest brain capacity. The stuff that also doesn't require my peak creativity. So let me give you another example. One of my clients discovered that she's a night owl. And she was forcing herself to wake up at 5 a.m. because that's what the productivity gurus told her to do. She was miserable, exhausted, and her content was suffering. And when she finally gave herself permission to sleep until 8 a.m. and then work until 7 p.m., which worked perfectly with her family schedule, her productivity doubled because she was finally working with her natural rhythms instead of against them. So here's what I want you to think about. When during the day do you have the most energy? When are you most creative? When do you make the best decisions? And then, this is crucial, when are you at your worst? When is your brain foggy? When do you feel drained? Now, here's the magic question. What if you structured your entire business around those patterns? What if you only did creative work during your peak energy times? What if you only took client calls when you're naturally energized by interaction? What if you batched all your admin work when your brain is foggy anyway? One of my intensive clients realized she was scheduling client calls during her peak creative morning hours. And when she could have been creating her course content and then trying to create in the afternoons when her brain was tired. And once we flipped it to calls in the afternoon and creation in the morning, she was working the same hours, made a complete difference to her energy levels. Your business should be designed around your life and your energy, not the other way around. So you can do this week. Map your natural energy patterns for 3 days. Note when you feel most creative, most energized, most social, and most drained. Then look at your calendar and start moving activities to match your natural rhythms. I use a color code in my calendar, so I know which time blocks are designated to calls and which time blocks are designated to quiet. Now, this episode is part of our Building Your Freedom Empire series, and here's why this is the foundation of sustainability and matters so much, because everything we're going to talk about over the next few weeks build on this. On Thursday, I'm diving into the worst business advice I got and why I'm grateful for it today. And one of those pieces of advice is directly related to what we're talking about today. So your spoiler alert is, someone once told me that if I wasn't working nights and weekends, I wasn't serious about my business. And I believed him. That advice nearly destroyed everything I'd built. And I want to invite you to tune in every week, every day this week, every Tuesday and Thursday, because we're going to be building a complete framework for how you're going to approach 2026 differently than you've approached any other years. This is not just planning your year. This is like taking a month to really set yourself up for the best year ever. Okay, now here's the ninja move that most people miss when they're trying to prevent burnout. Ready? You need to actively build recovery time into your business model. Not as an afterthought, but as a strategic necessity. Let me explain. In our agency, we work with clients who launch courses, and here's what I noticed. The most successful launchers aren't the ones who launch most frequently. They're the ones who build intentional recovery periods between those live launches. So here's what we do now. And this is what I recommend to all of my mentoring clients and students. After every major business initiative, like a launch or a big promotion or a program or a delivery period, you schedule some recovery time. It can be a day, it can be a week. It doesn't have to be a vacation necessarily, but a few days or a week where your only job is low energy maintenance tasks. During those recovery times, you don't create any new content, don't take any new calls, don't make any big decisions, only respond to urgent emails. And you catch up on admin. You process what just happened and you rest. This was revolutionary for me, because before I did this, I'd finish a launch and immediately start working on the next one or be back in the chaos of something else and wonder why I was perpetually exhausted. Now, if you want the advanced version of this, you can actually structure your entire business around cycles of intensity and recovery. One of my clients runs 2 major launches per year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And between those launches, she has intensive delivery periods for her program. She builds in 6 weeks of low season after each major initiative. During low season, she's still working, but she's only doing the minimum things to keep the business running. She's emailing her list once a week instead of 3 times. She's batching content for the next cycle. She's doing strategic planning. She's not pushing hard. And this is actually how nature works, right? There are seasons of growing and seasons of rest. And when you try to maintain constant growth without a rest season, you burn out. Here are some of the specific metrics that I track to make sure I'm not sliding back into burnout. I use Toggle to tell me how many hours I worked per week. And I aim to keep it under 40. 40 is enough, seriously. I track the percentage of the week I spent in my peak creativity zones, and I try to keep that at about 60% or higher. I keep track of the number of -2 energy activities per week. So I aim for 0, but we live in a real world, so there's going to be some. You're going to take on some, but then just be mindful of it. See it because you track it. And I track how many days per month I actually took the day off, which is usually about 2 Fridays per month. And then I look at how many weeks per year, I was completely on vacation away. And for me, that's about 6 weeks per year. If any of these metrics start slipping, that's my early warning system that I'm heading towards unsustainable territory. So choose your metrics and then put them in a simple tracking sheet or a note on your phone and review them monthly. Have an appointment with yourself monthly where you look at this. I do mine on the last Friday of every month. I block it off and it takes me about 20 minutes. And that 20-minute review has saved me from burnout many times because it gives me the warning signs early. Okay, before we wrap up, let me save you some pain. Here are 3 things you need to stop doing immediately if you want to prevent burnout. Number 1, Stop measuring your worth by how busy you are. Being busy is not the same as being productive. And being exhausted is not the same as being successful. If someone asks you how you're doing and your first response is so busy, that is not something to be proud of. That's a warning sign. I see it constantly in our communities, the online courses world, the digital marketing world, where people wear their overwhelm like a badge of honor. Just stop it. It's not healthy. Your goal should be to build a business that gives you freedom, not one that consumes your entire life. Number 2, stop saying yes to everything that might make money. Every opportunity comes with energy cost, not just time cost. And just because something could be profitable doesn't mean it should be in your business model. I once calculated that I was spending 8 hours on activities that generated $200 when I could have spent those same 8 hours on activities that generated $2,000. But I kept saying yes because I didn't want to, leave money on the table. But here's the truth. You can't pick up every dollar. Some money isn't worth the energy it costs to earn it. Third thing you need to stop. Stop waiting until you're successful to take care of yourself. This one I tell myself. This is the big one. This is the one that I stepped in. I see people say, once I hit 6 figures, I'll slow down. Or once I hit 7 figures, I'll slow down. Once this launch is over, I'll rest. Once I build my dream team, I'll take some time off. No, stop it. That's not how it works. If you build an unsustainable business at 50K, you'll have an unsustainable business at 100K and at 500K and at 1 million. The numbers change, but the patterns don't. Everywhere you go, there you are. You have to build sustainability in from the beginning. You're not going to bolt it on later. Listen, I know this episode might have brought up some uncomfortable realizations. Maybe you recognize yourself in some of these stories, or maybe you're looking at your calendar for the next month and feeling that knot in your stomach because you know you're heading straight towards it. Here's what I want you to know. You're not stuck with the business model you've created. You can change it. You can redesign it. When I started this episode, I mentioned those podcasters I looked at. Kerry Green posting I was running a 7-figure business and falling apart behind the scenes. Jenna Kutcher talking about the hidden warning signs of burnout, and Natalie Ellis taking a break because she's too burnt out to keep creating content. I could have been any one of them. And in fact, I was. This was me in 2021, lying by the pool in Noosa, unable to relax. That was me in November, having a panic attack on my couch. And that was me taking a break from podcasting for 2 years because I was too burnt out to function. And here's the difference between where I was then and where I am now. I have rebuilt my business around sustainability for me instead of hustle for someone else. I designed it to give me energy instead of drain it. I created systems that support my life instead of consume it. And the beautiful thing is, when you do that, your business actually becomes more profitable, not less, because you make better decisions when you're rested. You create better content when you're energized, and you serve your clients better when you're not depleted. Your freedom empire isn't built on hustle and exhaustion. It's built on sustainable systems, intentional design, and the courage to do business differently than everyone else around you. Those podcasters I mentioned, They're figuring this out too. Some are taking breaks, some are redesigning it, some are being honest about what's not working. And that takes courage. You have that same courage. I know you do. Because you're here listening to this, willing to look at this uncomfortable truth about what's draining you. This is just the first in a whole series of episodes where we're going to talk about how to build your sustainable business. I want you to make sure you subscribe to the show because on Thursday we're diving into the worst business advice I got and why I'm grateful for it today. And you'll want to hear this one because some of the advice that nearly destroyed my business turned out to be the best learning experience I've ever had. You're building something meaningful and you're creating your freedom empire. And you don't have to burn yourself out to do it. So here's to your success and to your sanity, and I'll talk to you again on Thursday. Bye. Before you go, if today's episode helped you, imagine how many more lives could be transformed if other creators, coaches, and experts found these strategies too. Your shares and reviews help more course creators discover how to get their knowledge out into the world. Please take a moment to rate the show and leave a quick review. When you do, we get to reach more people and we make a bigger impact together. Because when more people who help people succeed, the world becomes a better place. Thank you.